Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. All right, since yesterday, my last video, Russia has announced a partial mobilization of their military forces. Now, there is a whole lot of information to unpack about this and misconceptions that need to be cleared up. So let's jump right into it. First of all, this is not a mobilization of their active duty conscripts. The ones that they have called up are former service members with combat experience that have gotten out within the past 10 years. Okay? Doesn't matter where they have seen combat. The only ones being activated are the ones that have seen prior combat. All right, so this is a total of 300,000 soldiers that are being activated. And that comprises 1% of the potential military force of Russia. In case you don't know, Russia does have compulsory military service. You reach a certain age and you will spend a certain amount of time in the military. I think it is a mandatory 2 years. So this gives them a base of roughly 3 million soldiers that they could mobilize at any given time. But this is 1%, 300,000. Okay, I'm hearing all kinds of stuff like, all right, there are about 250,000, contract soldiers that are on the front lines in Donbass right now. And people are saying, well, this is going to double the amount of soldiers on the front line. It's like I said yesterday, most of those that are on the front line right now are contracted soldiers. Many of their contracts are ending. Some will renew, some will not. So in a lot of cases, this is going to rotate out those soldiers, those fighters. But then you've got the fighters from the LPR and the DPR as well that are fighting alongside with Russia. I've been hearing also some claims that, the ones up there are recruiting from prisons. Actually, if that is happening, that is not the Russian military that is doing this. That is the Wagner forces, which is an elite mercenary force. Russia is very open about the fact that they use the Wagner forces. They state it right out in the open. Unlike the United States, who tries to hide our military forces, calling them security forces, such as, I don't remember, who was it, Blackwater or whatever, Cheney's dang company. Anyway, and they call them security forces. No, Russia actually comes out and says, no, they're a mercenary force. So, Russia does fund this military force and calls them up when they are needed. So even if there is truth to this, which I'm not completely sold on, I think a lot of that is just Ukrainian propaganda. But if they are, then they're trying to recruit former Donbass soldiers and maybe even Ukrainian soldiers. Remember, early on in this conflict, there were many Ukrainian soldiers who felt that they had been abandoned at the front lines by Ukraine. So they got a bone to pick. So it's very possible that they can recruit former Ukrainian soldiers, to fight against Ukraine at this point. All right, so Russia also said that these forces are going to be trained before they are deployed to the front lines. Now, some sources are saying that means that it will take like 3 months for them to be up at the front lines. I do not believe that at all, not with everything that is going on with the referendums going on at this time. I'll tell you what that most likely means. Yes, some of these soldiers have been out of the service for, months, years. So what Russia wants to do is do a physical exam, do a physical fitness test, do sharp marksmanship training, make sure that they are up to date on any technological changes that have taken place since those soldiers left the service, make sure their knowledge is still up to snuff. So I'm really guessing maybe a large part of them, they probably won't be all deployed all at once. But the first ones I expect to be up at the front lines within a week or two, maybe during this referendum. This is going to happen very rapidly because Ukraine is going to try and mobilize whoever they can, but Ukraine has already mobilized pretty much everybody they can mobilize at this point. So anybody that they try to mobilize up to the front lines are going to be people that are not in the best condition, not trained for the front lines, no combat experience, and that's not going to turn out well. What was Ukraine's very first response to this mobilization? Can you guess? Let me tell you what it was. To beg for Western governments to double the amount of money first and weapons second. Well, even if Western governments pledge to double the amount of weapons, it's going to take months to years for these weapons to make it to the front lines. If the United States started sending weapons right now, it's going to take weeks to months for any weapons that we've got actively in the arsenal to get there. And that's if those weapons make it to the front lines at all, because Russia's going to try and destroy as many of those weapons as they can. And Russia increased their number of aircraft sorties, I think, to 700 in a single day. And that is up from something like 200 that they had going on. So they've more than tripled the amount of sorties. Ukraine is not happy with this referendum. What you can absolutely count on is that they are going to be bombing civilian population centers as much as they can to disrupt these referendums. I'll say it again. A referendum is a democratic process. If the West opposes that, they are opposing democracy. If they want to claim that they're afraid that it would not be a valid vote count, then fine, send in UN observers, negotiate a ceasefire with Ukraine so that this referendum can move forward. bring in international observers and make sure that the vote count is valid. How do you define sovereignty? I've asked this question before. If you're defining sovereignty as lines on a map, then you're not caring about the people of a country. You're not caring about democracy. Now, where Ukraine is trying to intensify actual military fighting along the front line, well, their soldiers are already exhausted, stressed out, taxed out. And these are their most combat-hardened veterans, and combat-experienced veterans. And I'm going to give them credit. These people have fought valiantly for their country. But now they're just going to be thrown into the breach. For what? Stop and hold peace talks now. Stop doing this. Stop killing people. On both sides, just stop it. Anyway, so if they start throwing more, less experienced veterans up there, ones that are not ready to fight, this is wrong. Instead of just holding peace talks, giving up the Donbass region, giving up Crimea. All right, another thing to notice here is that if there's something like this that happens, Russia announces their mobilization, what you would expect to see would be other countries that are surrounding the other sides of Ukraine to also announce a mobilization. But they're not. Belarus, Poland, Hungary, they're not mobilizing, which means that they have no intention of stepping in and helping Ukraine. There have been many political indications that what they are really going to do here is wait for Ukraine to fall and then come in and try to snatch up some of the broken off pieces. They want Ukraine to fall so that they can seize territories that once belonged to them at one time. All right, so Vladimir Putin did not state it, but members of the Russian parliament, the Duma, have announced that any of these regions that are holding a referendum that choose to rejoin Russia by referendum will be approved to rejoin Russia immediately. Not next week, next month, next year, immediately. And after that point, it doesn't matter what Western countries have to say about it. Once they are accepted by Russia as part of Russia, then any attacks on those regions will be an attack on the sovereign state of Russia and will be met with military force. This could escalate to a full declaration of war against Ukraine. They haven't said that, but you can expect that that is where it would go if no diplomatic channels are opened. And that is what needs to happen, is diplomatic channels being opened. Peace talks. Find a way to end this without more bloodshed. For now, what this mobilization means is more forces coming in to secure the Donbass region from Ukrainian attacks. That's what it means right now. It is a defensive force that is coming in, not an aggressive force. They may try to retake areas that are officially part of the Donbass. They may, but they haven't not even announced that as yet. They're trying to hold what they have taken right now. As far as, claims of Ukrainian victories, that Kharkov offensive they didn't meet any resistance. The Kherson offensive, it was even, reported in Western media that it was a complete failure. They lost massive numbers of troops and equipment. And they're still waiting for equipment to replace that, trying to train replacement forces for the ones that they just threw away. Lives thrown away for nothing but some minor PR victory, really. I do expect that some of these forces are going to retake Kharkov. So that may be what Russia is waiting on to retake Kharkov, is for these new forces to come in there. Large number of them will wind up in the Kharkov region to do that. So, again, that's part of the region that they had retaken from Ukraine, which Ukraine had invaded over the preceding 8 years. I've shown the maps on my channel of what Donbass looked like in 2014 as opposed to 2021. Ukraine had seized half of the Donbass region. And it doesn't even look like Russia at this point is even trying to take back the entire 2014 borders. That could change. I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see about that one. I mean, Russia keeps on saying, we need to negotiate, and Ukraine keeps on saying, we won't negotiate until all Russian forces are out of Ukraine, including Crimea. This is completely unrealistic, and it is suicidal. One of the biggest reasons I made this video so late in the day was that I was rather hoping that with the announcements coming out of Russia that Ukraine would take a step back and reassess their priorities and say, okay, let's talk. That hasn't happened. Instead, they doubled down. Another thing that Ukraine, Zelensky is asking the West to do, asking Europeans to do, is to intensify sanctions. Protests are rising and growing in size in Europe. How much more can Europe suffer for this? Without any effort at peace, without any effort at all toward peace talks, do you think the European people are going to continue to pay higher prices, to run the risk of cold winters for the next 5 to 10 years, the collapse of their industries, and so forth and so on? It means absolutely nothing to Ukraine, or to Jens Stoltenberg, or to Biden, or all these different people that are so-called leaders. Not a single one of them is suggesting peace talks. And this, I do not expect that Russia is going to try and invade all of Ukraine unless there is just no other choice. But if the Ukrainian military collapses, then they won't need to. When there is no military left to fight, they're not going to have to go in and invade any further. They'll stop right where they are and still be calling for peace talks. But you know, what's the response going to be? We don't have military left, so let's send our children in, or whatever. I would love to hear objective reports about what's going on the ground in Ukraine right now, but that's not going to happen. So let's see what the next few days bring about. Let's hope that this results in peace talks. You would think that just the announcement of the mobilization would be enough. Pardon me. Anyway, I keep on hoping, keep crossing my fingers, keep hoping with me that this is going to lead to eventual peace talks, but I don't expect it to happen within the next few days. I don't even expect it to happen after the referendum. Ukraine is just going to refuse to recognize the referendum, but then that's going to pose an entirely new problem. Let's hope not. I hope that I am wrong and that they actually engage in peace talks. I've never cheered for this war to happen. I've never wanted this war to happen. I've been grieving over the death that has been going on there for 8 years. But it has to end sometime, some way. And when diplomacy fails, when the West, the UN, all refuse to engage in diplomacy, there aren't many options left except to allow genocide. And that was what was going to happen if Russia did not step in. I'm not going to call Russia or Putin heroic, but they're doing what they felt needed to happen, and to some degree I agree with it. I don't see any other option that was any other avenue that they could have taken. Anyway, share this video, talk about these subjects, cross your fingers, hope, pray, scream for peace talks. All right. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching.